I walked into that office every day and listened to them mock me, my accent, my background, everything. They thought I was beneath them. They thought they could bully me into silence. But I kept smiling, because while they were busy laughing, I was busy preparing. And when the truth finally came out, let's just say there's a special kind of satisfaction in watching your bullies choke on their own arrogance. I was born in the United States, a child of two very different worlds. My father, Nigerian, proud, ambitious, already dreaming of the political path he would take. My mother, Caucasian, brilliant, gentle, willing to leave everything behind for love. I was 6 when we left the US and moved to Nigeria. My little brother Segun was 4, and though he didn't understand, I knew we were starting a completely new life. My mother's family back in America had protested. "You can't just uproot your children," they said, "but love doesn't ask permission, does it?" My mother chose our family over her past, over comfort, over familiarity. Life in Nigeria was noisy, full of colors and smells I had never known. I remember the first time I tried speaking to the neighborhood children. I sounded different, polished, American. They laughed at my accent and I laughed too, hiding the sting. My parents didn't just survive here, they thrived. My mother became a university lecturer, shaping minds with her knowledge. My father immersed himself in politics, learning the games that would one day define him. And I learned to adapt, to observe, to carry pieces of two worlds inside me. I grew up listening to debates at the dinner table. My father discussing legislation, policies, elections. My mother correcting his grammar with a smile, teaching me that words could be weapons or shields. Segun and I followed our parents' footsteps in curiosity. My mother insisted that education was power. My father insisted that strategy was power. Together they instilled in me a quiet confidence. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to prove myself constantly. The world would notice eventually. Even as a child, I understood privilege, not just the wealth my father's career brought, but the opportunity. But I also understood perception. How the world judged people by accent, by appearance, by where they came from. And I promised myself, the day I returned to America, no one would ever underestimate me. School in Nigeria was different from school in the States. I missed my friends from America, my teachers, the way words rolled off my tongue there. Here I had to relearn. I had to fight to be understood, to be accepted, to be respected. Some classmates teased me for speaking differently. Others avoided me. But my parents had taught me to observe before acting, to learn before reacting. I became patient, quiet, a girl who smiled while taking mental notes of everyone around her. I learned the value of strategy early. How to move without drawing attention, how to build silently, how to save my energy for the battles that really mattered. By the time I finished secondary school, I was ready. I had learned the lessons my parents had been teaching me: education, resilience, perception, strategy. I knew that when I returned to America for university, I would be prepared, not just to survive, but to thrive. I packed my books, my clothes, my memories, and a notebook full of plans. Plans for my future. Plans for the day when people would look at me differently, when they would stop underestimating me. And most importantly, plans for the day when no one could humiliate me without consequences. The last night in Nigeria was quiet. My parents tucked Segun and me into bed, kissed our foreheads and whispered blessings. My mother's voice trembled slightly. "You'll make us proud," she said. I smiled, pretending to sleep, though I was buzzing with excitement and nerves. America was waiting. University, internships, challenges I had never faced. I had no illusions it wouldn't be easy. But one thing I knew for certain: I was ready to step into a world that had underestimated me. And when they did, they wouldn't know what hit them. Returning to the United States felt surreal. The smells, the sounds, the familiar streets, it all seemed smaller than I remembered. I had grown, matured, and carried with me lessons from Nigeria that no American classroom could have taught me. I enrolled in university determined to excel. But I quickly realized something: people still judged me by my accent, not loudly, not at first, but subtly. Classmates would repeat things I said, asking me to say it again or chuckling behind their hands. They didn't know me. They didn't know the fire I carried inside. I kept my head down, studying hard, volunteering for group projects, building networks quietly. I refused to let small-minded mockery derail me. Meanwhile, I applied for internships, not just to gain experience, but to understand the corporate world that awaited me after graduation. My first internship was at my grandmother's company, though no one in the office knew my connection. I introduced myself as Selma, an eager university student. Everyone assumed I was just another immigrant intern. Jack, a colleague a year older than me, smirked when I made my first presentation. "Interesting perspective," he said, "for someone who's new." The tone was dismissive, almost mocking. Desmond whispered jokes about my accent behind my back. I smiled politely, I listened, I observed. This was my choice. I could fight back now and risk exposing myself. Or I could wait, watch, and let my actions speak louder than my words. I chose the latter. Over the weeks, I learned the rhythm of the office. How Hilda, the supposed sweet colleague, wielded influence by gossiping, undermining others, and subtly taking credit for other people's work. How Mr. Wayland, the manager, avoided conflict and let office politics rule the day. I made mental notes. Every laugh at my expense, every eye roll, every whispered insult. I didn't forget a single one. While others thought I was quiet and compliant, I was building a blueprint, a roadmap to eventual triumph. I didn't tell anyone who I was. Not yet. My family's legacy, my grandmother's influence, and the opportunities that awaited me were private. If I revealed my connection, the office would treat me differently, for the wrong reasons. Instead, I focused on excelling: presentations, reports, problem-solving tasks. Slowly, colleagues began to see competence, but always with a patronizing undertone. "She's good for an intern," Jack would whisper. I filed it all mentally. I knew their ignorance was my advantage. By the end of my first semester, I had proven myself quietly but effectively. Yet the office tension remained. I was the quiet girl who didn't sound American, and that was enough to make them feel superior. One afternoon, as I left the office after a long day, I overheard Desmond laughing with Hilda. "Bet she doesn't even know what she's walking into when she graduates." I stopped dead, my fingers tightened around my bag strap. Oh, they had no idea. I was already planning, already waiting, already building, and when the time came, they would wish they had never mocked me. Walking across the stage at graduation felt surreal. The applause, the flashing cameras, the proud smiles of my parents, I savored every moment, yet I couldn't ignore the quiet excitement building inside me. Graduation wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of a plan years in the making. After the ceremony, I received an offer to work full-time at my grandparents' company. Officially, I was just Selma, the promising young graduate with a non-American accent. Unofficially, I was someone they had no idea about, a granddaughter of the family that owned the empire they worked in. I accepted with a polite smile and a quiet promise to myself: I will show them exactly what they've underestimated. The first day back at the office was electric with tension. Colleagues greeted me with faint smiles, but I could feel their skepticism. "She's just a graduate," Hilda whispered, glancing at me with a smirk. "Let's see how long she lasts." Jack gave me a condescending pat on the shoulder. "Welcome back, Selma. Hope you're ready for the real work." Desmond added, "Don't get lost in the coffee machine like last time." I smiled politely, keeping my composure. Every laugh, every sneer, every underestimation, I stored it. Quietly, strategically, I knew patience was key. Hilda became the ringleader immediately. Meetings were small but deliberate. She would interrupt me, whisper sarcastic comments, or credit herself for ideas I had presented. Jack and Desmond laughed at her jokes, while Mr. Wayland looked on awkwardly, unwilling or too weak to intervene. At first I ignored it. I smiled. I delivered my tasks on time. I kept my reports flawless. Every time they tried to undermine me, I collected evidence silently. Each insult, each mockery, each glance of disbelief became fuel. I understood something they never would. Revenge is quiet, calculated, and devastating when they least expect it. One afternoon, I was assigned a project that Hilda had also expressed interest in. She assumed she would take the lead, of course, and that I would stumble. But I didn't stumble. I delivered a report so precise, insightful, and innovative that even Mr. Wayland nodded in approval. Hilda's smirk faltered. Desmond's laughter died in his throat. Jack's raised eyebrows betrayed his disbelief. I left the room with my head high, my heart calm. They had underestimated me once again, and the frustration on their faces was delicious. A few days later, my cousin Idris from Nigeria visited the office. He had heard stories of my struggle, but wanted to see for himself. He witnessed Hilda whispering insults, Jack rolling his eyes, Desmond chuckling behind his hand. Idris wanted to confront them immediately to protect me. I stopped him gently, placing a hand on his arm. No, I whispered. I don't want them scared, I want them surprised. Revenge tastes better when they never see it coming. Idris nodded, understanding the plan, and I smiled inwardly. The first battle had been quiet, subtle, but the war was just beginning. It was a regular Monday morning, or so they thought. Mr. Wayland called me into the conference room on the 10th floor, requesting a progress report on a project I'd been handling for weeks. Selma, we'd like you to present your findings, he said, smiling nervously. Hilda's eyes sparkled with anticipation. She leaned forward, ready to interrupt. Jack and Desmond smirked, clearly confident I would stumble. I opened my folder and began, calmly, clearly, fluently. Every slide precise, every explanation flawless. Hilda raised her hand to interject, but Mr. Wayland hesitated. Go ahead, Selma. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Even Hilda's smirk had vanished. For the first time, the people who mocked me realized I wasn't just competent, I was in control. But I noticed a shadow flicker in Mr. Wayland's eyes. He was plotting. And Hilda, she was already whispering something into his ear. I left the room smiling politely, but deep down I knew this was far from over. Later that week, Hilda tried again. She scheduled a quick discussion with me, claiming she wanted to collaborate on a presentation. When I arrived, Jack and Desmond were already there, waiting with sarcastic smiles. You'll need some help, Hilda said sweetly. We don't want your accent confusing the board. I froze for a split second, not from shock but to let them feel the weight of their words. Then I smiled. Thanks, Hilda, I've got it covered. They laughed, thinking I had taken the insult lightly, but I had filed it mentally, every word, every sneer. That night I reviewed my notes, ensuring that the next time they tried to sabotage me I would be ready. I wasn't going to just survive, I was going to win. Mr. Wayland tried to intervene subtly, attempting to take credit for my recent successes. He asked me to hand over reports and let him present them to management. I agreed, smiling innocently. Of course, Mr. Wayland, anything to help the team. He didn't notice my careful annotations. Every page I handed him contained subtle notes that would make him appear unprepared in front of the board. By the time the meeting came, Hilda and Jack were smug, thinking they had me cornered. Instead, Mr. Wayland fumbled with my reports, misreading numbers and graphs I had strategically highlighted. I sat quietly, watching their plans crumble. The satisfaction was quiet but delicious. My cousin Idris visited again during a particularly tense week. He wanted to confront Hilda, Jack, and Desmond after witnessing another round of subtle bullying. I stopped him. Not yet, I whispered. The timing has to be perfect. Let them feel untouchable and then watch them fall. Idris nodded but frowned. They won't see it coming, will they? No, I said with a calm smile. That's the beauty of it. They're underestimating me, and that will be their biggest mistake. The office was buzzing with excitement. The company's 30th anniversary celebration was only days away. Rumors swirled about a surprise from the CEO. I heard whispers from Hilda. I bet the board is going to embarrass the intern. I smiled to myself. They had no idea. The night would come, and when it did, every sneer, every insult, every condescending laugh would meet its match. But for now I waited, calmly, strategically, patiently. Because the real shock was coming, and no one in that office was ready for it. The office was electric that morning. Everyone was preparing for the company's 30th anniversary celebration downtown. Hilda's whispers were louder than ever. Jack was smug. And Desmond was practically vibrating with excitement at the thought of embarrassing me in front of the higher-ups. I smiled quietly, sipping my coffee. They thought they were ready. They were not even close. My grandmother had arrived unexpectedly earlier that morning, but the office hadn't noticed her presence. No one knew she was watching, quietly assessing and waiting for the perfect moment to intervene. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to myself, "Patience, Selma, everything is about to change." When I returned to my office in the late afternoon, the door was locked. Curious, maybe nervous, a little, but I didn't panic. My grandmother was inside. She looked at me with the kind of smile that carries both warmth and authority. "Selma, come in," she said. Everyone in the office could hear the door shut. Whispers began immediately. "What's going on in there? Why is she meeting the CEO? Is she in trouble?" I simply smiled and sat down across from her. The air was thick with curiosity, tension, and a faint whiff of fear. Hilda, Jack, and Desmond were packing outside, unaware that the game was about to shift dramatically. Later that evening, at the anniversary party downtown, I watched my colleagues laugh, drink, and enjoy themselves, completely oblivious to the storm about to hit. Suddenly, my grandmother approached the podium. The crowd quieted instantly. To my baby girl who returned home after so many years, she said, her voice strong and clear, "You have gladdened an old woman's heart." I froze for a split second as everyone turned to look at me. Whispers erupted. "Is that her? She's the granddaughter. I thought she was just an intern." My grandmother gestured for me to come forward. I walked to the stage, head held high, heart steady. The room erupted in astonishment, and Hilda, Jack, and Desmond's faces drained of color. On the stage, my grandmother smiled at me. "This company has been in our family for decades. Since my mother passed it down, I have carried the responsibility. But today, I am passing it to the person who has proven herself capable, intelligent, and resilient, my granddaughter Selma." Gasps echoed through the hall. Phones were raised, eyes wide. Hilda's mouth opened and closed, searching for words. Jack's smug smile was gone, replaced by disbelief. Desmond shook his head in shock. I looked out at the stunned crowd and whispered, just loud enough for them to hear. "You thought you were laughing at me, but I was learning, watching, and preparing." The applause thundered. I accepted my grandmother's hand, the weight of authority and validation settling over me. For the first time, the people who mocked me, belittled me, and undermined me realized the truth. They had underestimated the wrong person. Hilda, Jack, and Desmond could only watch as I walked past them, the glow of triumph radiating around me. Their whispers of mockery had become silent awe. That night, I understood something vital. Revenge doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes it's the quiet, unstoppable rise to power that leaves people speechless. And tonight, I was untouchable. The next morning, the office was quieter than usual. Hilda, Jack, and Desmond slouched at their desks, eyes darting nervously, unsure how to act. I walked in, calm, composed, and fully aware of my new authority. The weight of responsibility felt different from the thrill of revenge. It was empowering. I began restructuring teams, assigning tasks, and setting deadlines. Every decision I made was calculated, demonstrating my competence and subtly reminding my colleagues that their previous arrogance had blinded them. Mr. Wayland approached me nervously. "Selma, do you need help with the reports?" I smiled politely. "Thank you, but I've got it covered. I'll let you know if I need guidance." His shoulders sagged. For the first time, he realized weakness had no place in my office anymore. Hilda tried to interject mid-meeting, but I addressed her calmly yet firmly. "Hilda, I appreciate your input, but let's allow the facts to speak for themselves." The room fell silent. Hilda's eyes widened in disbelief. She had spent months undermining me, and now I held all the power. By the end of the week, the ripple effects of my new authority became undeniable. Jack's projects were reassigned. Desmond's suggestions were carefully scrutinized before implementation. Hilda's influence was minimized. They whispered to each other, frantic and panicked. "How did she do this?" Jack muttered. They didn't see it coming. They had underestimated me, mocked my accent, dismissed my intelligence, and now every decision I made highlighted their incompetence. I didn't gloat. I simply executed my work with precision and calm. Let them choke on the results of their arrogance. One afternoon, Hilda approached me, feigning friendliness. "Selma, congratulations on the presentation last week. You did really well." I smiled, a faint glint in my eye. "Thank you, Hilda. I hope next time your support will match your words." She faltered, realizing that my rise was no accident. Every insult, every mockery had fueled me. Every sneer they had thrown at me became the foundation of their own humiliation. The satisfaction was quiet, subtle, but devastatingly effective. Weeks passed and the office transformed. Respect replaced mockery, strategy replaced chaos, and I became the silent force everyone depended on. Hilda, Jack, and Desmond learned, too late, that their arrogance and cruelty were no match for my resilience and intelligence. I had turned every insult into insight, every obstacle into opportunity. They had underestimated me, and in doing so they had built my throne for me. I glanced at the office window overlooking the city lights, thinking, they mocked me, and yet they had no idea who I really was. The final day of the month, I walked through the office with my head held high. My grandmother's trust, my own perseverance, and the lessons from Nigeria had all culminated into one undeniable truth. I was untouchable. Desmond avoided eye contact. Jack didn't try to make a joke. Hilda stopped whispering. Their arrogance had been dismantled without a single scream, without a single confrontation. I paused at my office door and whispered to myself. They mocked my accent, if only they knew who I was. The city skyline glittered outside, reflecting the power, confidence, and triumph I had fought so hard to claim. This wasn't just revenge, it was my destiny, and I had seized it fully. And though the office would never be the same, one thing was certain. Every whisper, every sneer, every glance of disbelief would linger in their minds forever. My first week in leadership proved exactly what I suspected. The company was stuck in outdated systems and weak leadership. So I rolled up my sleeves. Every department got audited. Every team got performance reviews. Every project got restructured. People whispered in panic. Is she trying to change everything? Yes, I was. Because mediocrity had ruled this company for too long. Once I settled in, I carefully began removing the dead weight. Not firing, just reallocating, restructuring, and quietly phasing out those who held us back. Jack lost access to sensitive projects. Desmond was reassigned under a stricter supervisor. Hilda was moved away from the frontline decision-making she abused. None of them saw it coming. None of them could stop it. And I didn't raise my voice once. My first major project launched faster and cleaner than any in the past 5 years. I introduced automation, expanded overseas partnerships, cut unnecessary spending, improved customer service. The board was shocked. My grandmother simply smiled and said, I knew she could. But the biggest change was yet to come. One afternoon, my grandmother invited me to a private lunch. You're about to meet someone important, she said. When he walked in, I felt the room shift. Damien. Tall, calm, confident. The son of my grandfather's closest friend, a family we had strong business ties with. He offered his hand and smiled. So you're the Selma my father won't stop talking about. I blinked. Your father talks about me. He chuckled. Oh, you have no idea. Damien was brilliant. Sharp, focused, and annoyingly perceptive. We discussed business expansion, global markets, and company weaknesses. By the time lunch ended, he had mapped out a plan that perfectly aligned with mine. Work with me, he said. We can take your company farther than your grandmother ever dreamed. I agreed. But strictly for business. I had no intention of mixing feelings into my rise. The moment Damien started visiting the office, rumors exploded. Is he her boyfriend? Is he the reason she's suddenly in power? She's not even American, how did she get this connection? I didn't respond. I let the whispers fuel their confusion, their jealousy, their fear. Because while they were busy gossiping, Damien and I were planning the company's next big leap. Together, Damien and I launched a major expansion into Europe and Africa. New warehouses, new products, new leadership teams. Revenue skyrocketed. Board approval soared. And for the first time in the company's history, we were recognized as a global competitor. People who mocked my accent now asked for my approval. Funny, isn't it? One day, Hilda came into my office with trembling hands. Selma, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how I treated you. I looked at her calmly. I accept your apology, but I don't forget. She swallowed hard. And that was enough. Sometimes revenge is letting people live with the memory of who they used to be, while watching who you became. Late one evening, after a long strategy session, Damien turned to me and said, You know, you don't have to do this alone. I paused. He wasn't talking about business, and we both knew it. But I wasn't ready, not yet. Maybe one day, I said softly. But right now I have a company to run. He smiled. Then I'll be here, whatever you need. His presence wasn't romantic. It was steady, supportive, respectful, something I wasn't used to. A year after the anniversary reveal, I stood in the top-floor boardroom looking out over the city. The girl they mocked, the intern they belittled, the immigrant they thought didn't belong, now ran a global empire. I whispered to myself. They mocked my accent. And now they repeat my strategies. My grandmother walked in and placed a hand on my shoulder. You've made this family proud, Selma. I turned to her and smiled. No, Grandma, I made myself proud. Because revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about rising so high. They have no choice but to look up.